London was raining again. It always seemed to rain when Eleanor couldn't sleep. The city shimmered outside her penthouse windows, cold lights bleeding across wet streets, black cars gliding silently through the night below. Usually she loved this view. It reminded her of power, of movement, of ambition. Tonight, it felt distant, like she was watching someone else's life. Her wine sat untouched beside her. Her laptop glowed with unanswered emails. And on the dining table, a photograph. Not of Ibrahim, she didn't have one. Just a postcard from the Maldives the resort had tucked into her luggage after departure. Turquoise water, white sand. A place that no longer felt real. But him she remembered perfectly. "You're distracted." Eleanor looked up sharply. Richard Hale stood in the doorway of the conference room, adjusting the cuff of his tailored navy suit. Senior partner, wealthy, connected, predictable, safe. The kind of man her world approved of. "I'm fine," she replied. "You've said that 3 times this week." She offered a polite smile. "Then maybe you should believe it." Richard studied her for a moment longer than usual, and Eleanor hated that, because it meant her mask was slipping. 2 months ago, she would have agreed to dinner with him, maybe more. Not because she wanted to, because it made sense. Their lives aligned neatly. The same circles, the same expectations, the same carefully constructed future. But now, every conversation with men like Richard felt strangely hollow, as if she had accidentally tasted something real and couldn't go back to imitation. That night, she dreamed of Ibrahim again. Not fantasies, memories. The warmth of his hands, the sound of the ocean behind his voice, the unbearable calm in his eyes whenever she spiraled into overthinking. She woke breathless, frustrated, and deeply, deeply angry with herself. This had to stop. It was irrational, embarrassing even. A woman like her obsessing over a brief holiday romance with a hotel employee halfway across the world. Ridiculous. And yet, no matter how hard she tried, he stayed. 3 days later, Eleanor found herself standing in front of an art gallery in Chelsea, barely aware of how she got there. A networking event, champagne, investors, curated smiles. Her natural habitat. Except tonight, everything felt unbearably loud. "You look bored already." She turned. Richard again. He handed her a glass of champagne. "I am bored already," she admitted. That surprised them both. Richard smirked faintly. "Well, that's at least honest." Honest. The word hit her like a physical thing. She immediately looked away. "You seeing someone?" Richard asked casually. Eleanor froze. "No." "You hesitated." "I was thinking." "About him?" Her pulse stumbled. Dangerous. "How many dramatic assumptions are you planning to make tonight?" "Enough to notice that you've been somewhere else for weeks." Eleanor inhaled slowly, then smiled with practiced composure. "You're imagining things." But even she no longer believed herself. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Ibrahim stood barefoot at the edge of the shoreline, staring out into the dark ocean. The night air was warm, the island quiet. But inside him, nothing felt calm anymore. "She changed you." Ibrahim glanced sideways. His older brother, Karim, stood beside him holding 2 beers. Ibrahim accepted one quietly. "No," he said after a moment. "She reminded me." "Of what?" A pause. "That I wanted more." Karim laughed softly. "Dangerous thing, wanting more." Ibrahim stared toward the horizon. "Yes," he murmured. "I know." The truth was, meeting Eleanor had ruined something. Not his peace, his acceptance. Before her, his world had boundaries he understood. Predictable routines, predictable dreams. Now London existed in his mind like a challenge, like temptation, like possibility. And he hated that almost as much as he wanted it. Weeks passed. Then one evening, everything changed. Eleanor was halfway through another soul-draining corporate dinner when her phone buzzed beneath the table. Unknown number. Normally, she ignored those. Tonight, she answered. "Hello?" Static. Then, "Eleanor?" Her entire body went still. That voice, low, calm, familiar, impossible. For a second, neither of them spoke, because neither knew where to begin. "I probably shouldn't have called," Ibrahim admitted quietly. "No," she whispered. A pause. "Probably not." But neither hung up. The restaurant around her faded into background noise. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the endless performance of wealth and importance. None of it mattered now. Only him. "How did you get this number?" she asked softly. "I asked the resort manager." "That's mildly terrifying." A faint laugh on the other end. God, she missed that sound. "You sound tired," he said. Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. "I am." "Why?" The question was simple, but dangerous, because she knew he wasn't asking about work. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore," she admitted. And there it was, the truth she hadn't spoken out loud until now. Silence stretched between them, not awkward, heavy, intimate. "I think about you every day," Ibrahim said finally. No hesitation, no games, just honesty. And somehow, that was worse than if he had begged. Eleanor's chest tightened painfully. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why?" "Because you make me want impossible things." Another pause. Then, "What if they're only impossible because you're afraid of them?" Her breath caught, because deep down, she knew. He was right, again. "Eleanor?" "Yes?" "If I came to London," her pulse exploded, "would you regret seeing me?" the question lingered between them like fire. Dangerous, irresponsible, tempting. Eleanor should have said no, should have ended the call, should have protected the life she spent years building. Instead, very quietly, almost trembling, she asked, "When?" Eleanor didn't sleep after the call, not even for a minute. By 3 in the morning, London had become a blur of rain-streaked windows and restless pacing. Her penthouse felt smaller than usual, tighter somehow, as if the walls themselves knew something irreversible was approaching. Because it was. He was coming here, to her world. And suddenly, the fantasy they had carefully kept suspended between oceans and distance was about to face something much more dangerous. Reality. At 7:12 a.m., her assistant knocked lightly on her office door. "You have the Hastings acquisition meeting in 30 minutes. Eleanor looked up from absolutely nothing. For the first time in years, she had spent an entire morning staring at one paragraph in a document without reading a single word. "Right," she said quietly. "Are you all right?" "Yes." Automatic, convincing, a lie. The truth was simple. She was terrified. Not of seeing Ibrahim, of what seeing him would confirm. Because distance had given them protection. The Maldives had been isolated from consequence, a beautiful interruption suspended outside ordinary life. But London was sharp edges and scrutiny. It was wealth, power, class. The kind of world that quietly decided who belonged and who didn't. And Ibrahim, he belonged nowhere near it. At least that's what everyone around her would think. His flight landed on a Thursday evening. Cold rain covered Heathrow in silver mist. Eleanor arrived 20 minutes early and instantly hated herself for it. She never arrived early, not for anyone. Yet here she was, heart pounding beneath a charcoal coat, pretending not to stare every time the arrival doors opened. Then she saw him, and suddenly breathing became difficult. Even exhausted from travel, Ibrahim carried the same impossible calm about him. Dark coat, slight stubble, one small duffel bag slung over his shoulder. No performance, no attempt to impress. And somehow that made him stand out even more. His eyes found hers almost immediately, and everything else disappeared. For a moment, neither moved. The airport noise faded into nothing. People brushed past them. Announcements echoed overhead. None of it mattered, because after months of distance, he was real again. "You came," Eleanor said softly. Ibrahim smiled faintly. "You sound surprised." "I think I am." He stepped closer, close enough to bring back every memory she had tried to bury beneath work and routine. "You look different," he murmured. Her pulse stumbled. "How?" "Tired?" Trust him to notice that first. And And you, she replied carefully, look very calm for someone who just crossed the world. I wasn't calm. That surprised her. No? He shook his head once. I just knew I'd regret not coming. God, that man had a talent for dismantling her. The drive through London was quiet at first. Not awkward. Charged. The city glowed outside the car windows. Wet streets, blurred headlights, towering glass buildings stretching into the dark sky. Ibrahim watched everything carefully, curiously, as if trying to understand the world that created her. It's louder than I imagined, he said eventually. Eleanor gave a dry laugh. You get used to it. Do you? The question lingered, because she suddenly realized. No, maybe she never had. When they arrived at her penthouse, Ibrahim paused near the window overlooking the city skyline. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, quietly, this place feels lonely. Eleanor froze. Most people called it impressive, beautiful, luxurious. Only Ibrahim would see through it in seconds. You always do that, she said. Do what? Say things nobody else notices. He turned toward her slowly. Maybe nobody else is looking. The tension between them became unbearable after that. Not loud, not rushed. Worse, controlled. Every glance lasted too long. Every silence carried weight. Every inch of distance between them felt intentional, dangerous. You should eat something, Eleanor said finally, mostly to escape the intensity in the room. I'm not hungry. Her breath caught slightly, because she knew he wasn't talking about food anymore. Neither moved. The city hummed softly outside. Rain tapped against the glass. And somewhere beneath all Eleanor's discipline and restraint, something gave way. She crossed the room first, not strategically, not cautiously, just honestly. And the second Ibrahim's hand touched her waist, months of restraint shattered. The kiss was nothing like the one in the Maldives. That one had been emotional, tentative. A goodbye trying not to become a plea. This was hunger. Built up tension finally losing control. He kissed her like he had spent months trying not to think about her. And Eleanor, God, she responded like a woman exhausted from denying herself what she truly wanted. His hands slid carefully along her back, firm, protective, certain. And for the first time in years, Eleanor stopped thinking entirely. No future, no consequences, no class differences, no London, no Maldives. Just him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing unevenly, Ibrahim rested his forehead gently against hers. This is dangerous, Eleanor whispered. I know. We barely know what this is. I know. Her fingers tightened against his coat. And that doesn't scare you? He looked directly into her eyes then, steady as ever. It scares you enough for both of us. That almost made her laugh. Almost. Instead, she kissed him again, harder this time, like she was trying to silence every rational thought left in her mind. But reality always waits. The next morning, Eleanor walked into her office 20 minutes late. That alone caused concern. But what truly shifted the room was Richard, watching her, carefully, suspiciously. "You look different," he said quietly after the meeting ended. Eleanor gathered her documents calmly. "I'm getting tired of people saying that." Richard stepped closer, then lowered his voice. "Who is he?" Her entire body stiffened. Danger. Immediate danger. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult my intelligence." His tone wasn't jealous. It was worse. Calculating. Richard studied her for a long moment. Then finally, "You brought someone back from that trip, didn't you?" Silence. A mistake. And Richard noticed immediately. "Eleanor," he said carefully, "do you have any idea what people in this world would do with something like that?" Something like that, not someone. That told her everything. Anger rose instantly inside her. Cold, sharp, protective. "Be very careful what you say next," she warned quietly. Richard held her gaze, then sighed. "I'm trying to protect you." "No," Eleanor replied. "You're trying to protect the version of me that makes sense to you." And suddenly, for the first time in her life, she realized she no longer cared whether she made sense to people like Richard. That terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. Meanwhile, back at her penthouse, Ibrahim stood alone near the massive windows overlooking London, watching the rain, waiting, and slowly beginning to understand just how much this world might demand from both of them. By the time Eleanor returned home that evening, London was drowning in rain. The city lights blurred across the wet glass of her car window like smeared gold. Usually she loved nights like this. They felt cinematic, powerful. Tonight they felt ominous, because for the first time in years, she had something to lose. When the elevator doors opened into her penthouse, she saw him immediately. Ibrahim stood barefoot near the kitchen island, sleeves rolled up, quietly attempting to make tea, as though he had lived there for years. The sight of him in her space did something dangerous to her heart. Something intimate, domestic, real. "You cook?" she asked softly, slipping off her coat. He glanced over his shoulder with that infuriating calm smile. "I can survive without room service." She laughed before she could stop herself, a genuine laugh, and the sound surprised them both. "What?" he asked. "I don't do that often anymore." "What?" "Laugh like that." Ibrahim watched her carefully for a moment, then quietly, "That makes me sad for you." The warmth in the room shifted instantly, because he said things like that so naturally. No cruelty, no manipulation, just truth. Eleanor moved closer slowly. "You make everything sound simple." "No," he replied. "I think your world makes everything harder than it needs to be." Her phone buzzed sharply against the marble counter. The spell shattered. Richard. Again. She ignored it. The phone buzzed a second time, then a third. Ibrahim noticed. Work? Something like that. The phone rang again, persistent, aggressive. Finally, Eleanor grabbed it with visible irritation. What? Where are you? Richard's voice came immediately. Her expression hardened. At home. I came by your office. You left early. And? A pause. Then, you need to be careful. Her jaw tightened instantly. I'm not in the mood for cryptic warnings tonight. I'm serious, Eleanor. People are talking. Cold spread slowly through her chest. What people? The kind that matter. She looked toward Ibrahim instinctively. He stood quietly near the counter, pretending not to listen. But she knew he could feel the tension changing. This is none of your business, she said coldly. It becomes my business when it threatens the firm. There it was. Not concern, reputation, status, image. Eleanor's voice dropped dangerously low. You don't get to decide what threatens me. Then she hung up, hard. Silence settled heavily afterward. Rain against glass, the soft hum of the city below. And beneath it all, the growing awareness that their private world was beginning to crack. Ibrahim spoke first. You should tell me what's happening. Eleanor exhaled slowly. I work with people who treat relationships like business transactions. And me? The question landed softly, but heavily. You, she admitted quietly, complicate things. A faint smile touched his mouth. Complicate or expose? She looked away immediately, because she knew exactly what he meant. The truth was, before him, she could hide inside success, inside routine, inside ambition. Now everything felt painfully visible, especially herself. That night, sleep came easier beside him, and somehow, that frightened Eleanor more than loneliness ever had. At 2:17 a.m., she woke slowly to the sound of distant thunder. The room was dark except for the faint London glow bleeding through the curtains. Ibrahim slept beside her peacefully, one arm draped loosely across her waist. For a long moment, she simply watched him and felt panic. Not because she regretted this, because she didn't. That was the problem. She slipped carefully out of bed and walked toward the windows. The city stretched endlessly below. Cold, massive, demanding. Her world. You always run when your thoughts get loud? His voice startled her softly. Eleanor turned. Ibrahim was awake now, watching her from the bed. I wasn't running. You were standing dramatically by the window. That usually means trouble. Despite herself, she smiled faintly. Then the smile faded. This can't stay hidden forever. I know. You say that too calmly. He sat up slowly. What do you want me to do, Eleanor? Panic? Yes, she snapped suddenly. Maybe a little. The silence afterward felt sharp, raw. Finally, she spoke again. You don't understand what this world is like. Ibrahim held her gaze steadily. Then explain it to me. She laughed bitterly under her breath. It's exhausting. Everything matters. Appearances, status, connections. One mistake can destroy years of work. And loving someone is a mistake. The question cut deeper than she expected. No, she whispered. But people like us. She stopped herself. Too late. Ibrahim went still. People like us. God, there it was. The line neither of them had fully spoken aloud until now. Class, money, power, the invisible divide standing quietly between them from the beginning. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. No. You think your world would never fully accept me. Eleanor's silence answered for her. Ibrahim looked away first. And somehow that hurt more than anger would have. You know what's interesting? He said quietly after a moment. In the Maldives, you never made me feel small. She closed her eyes briefly. Please don't do this. But here, he continued softly, here you're afraid someone else will. The truth burned because it wasn't entirely wrong, and Eleanor hated herself for that. I spent my whole life fighting to be taken seriously, she admitted quietly. I know how cruel these people can be. Ibrahim stood slowly now, walked toward her, not angry, worse, disappointed. And what happens, he asked gently, when you become one of them? Her breath caught sharply, because that was the question she had been avoiding since the moment he stepped into London. The room felt smaller suddenly, tighter, charged with something more dangerous than desire. Truth. I came here for you, Ibrahim said quietly. And now, I don't know if you actually want me. He stepped closer. Or just the version of me that existed far away from your real life. Eleanor's chest tightened painfully. That's not fair. No, he agreed softly. It isn't. The distance between them now felt unbearable, not physical, emotional, fragile. Then suddenly, her phone buzzed again. A message. Unknown number. Eleanor glanced down automatically and froze. A photograph, taken earlier that evening. Her and Ibrahim, together outside her building. Below it, a single message. You should be more careful. Every ounce of warmth vanished from the room instantly. Ibrahim saw her expression change. What is it? Eleanor looked up slowly, fear creeping into her voice for the very first time. I think someone's watching us. Some love stories don't end where you expect. Subscribe to see how this one unfolds.